This opportunity. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill. This is actually a constitutional matter, a matter of inclusivity. Education is actually a basic right in our constitution. Inclusion is a basic right in our constitution, and yet the current situation in our education system does not recognize the alternative provision of basic education and training. And yet, as we have heard from the mover and other speakers, these are far more children in certain areas than in the formal schools that we recognize. But they are not in our formal systems. And yet, if you look at our policies, we actually touch on them here and there. If you look at the policy, the Albert policy of 2009, it actually recognizes that this category of schools exist. The basic education regulations of 2015 also recognizes that they exist. But if you get to the Basic Education Act of 2013, it defines only two categories of schools, public schools and private schools. And these actually, therefore, remain hanging in the middle. And the children in these schools do not get recognized. Our main record system for our children in education sector is actually NEMIS. Now, once these children are missing in NEMIS, even the budget process excludes them. The provision of funding excludes them. And that's a major exclusion that we really cannot afford. And I must say, let me also take this opportunity to say, this mirrors a major problem we have in education that as a country, we really need to address. There's a lot of effort, and I think members of the Education Committee are here, to make changes in the education system. One thing I see that we need to look at, we have very many policies coming one after the other. And I think it is actually very difficult to harmonize these policies. If you go back a little, you'll find we had the policy of delocalization, then we had the policy of 100% transition, then we came to the bigger change of competence-based education. When the task force came, we are now looking at placing children in comprehensive schools, junior secondary school, senior secondary school, and then with all that, we also came with a new funding system, particularly at university level, while we are still actually also running the HELP system. Even the admission system at university, we moved away from the joint board admission, and we have the COOPS admission. Now, Madam Speaker, when you have so many policies, and actually they are all desirable, looking at each one individually, it is actually progress if we could go ahead and achieve them. But I think it is like a mixed crop farming. You can't have maize and millet and beans and mung beans all in the same garden. Individually, each can be a good crop, but mixed up together, it becomes difficult. And administratively, it's actually a nightmare. So I think that's another issue we should address. I support this bill because this bill attempts, in a way, to actually address this and bring at least this category of children into our mainstream planning system. And you look at it, it starts in clause 2, is actually getting the proper definition of education and including this upbet in the definition, which previously was just private and public. And then, if you look at in the management of schools in clause 3, now they want the upbet schools to be represented in the National Education Board by at least 2 persons to cater for their needs. If you are not there, you are not there. So these people need to be actually in these boards. Then you look at clause 4, which again at county level are bringing them in so that they can be oversighted by the county education boards. And so that these can supervise them, see what is happening there, what the member for Honorable Kajwang was saying, that they do recognize when some payments are to be made without receipts. Well, that's a good way to recognize people. But now this bill brings it in. And if you look at then clause 6, which says the county government shall be responsible to provide funds to Albert schools, among other schools listed in the subsection. And really, we are bringing them in. And importantly, if you look at clause 7, Madam Speaker, this bill is giving the cabinet secretary the authority on financing. And I think this is important. If you look at infrastructure, even with our CDF, maybe our colleagues in Nairobi, where these are recognized and are many, are looking at these schools. But in most of our CDF, we consider them after we have considered the other schools, and yet they have our children there. And then if we put them, the clause 9 also brings them in and gets them listed amongst all other schools. If this is actually, if we pass this bill, and I'll encourage our colleagues to actually pass this bill, it will be a major improvement for these children who are in these schools. And you will be surprised, if we do that, the numbers will shock us. And when we go to the budgeting process, we may now have to realize we must put more money in this area to cater for these children. But without doing this, without getting them into NEMIS, without getting them into county education boards, international education boards, they'll be lost.